The drones are everywhere. And the Joe Biden administration says, nothing to see here. We got this. Do you believe them? That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. For weeks now, drones, mysterious drones, suspicious drones have been flying about in a slew of states: Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, disrupting operations, causing, in some instances, airstrips to be shut down because of concerns of safety for pilots and passengers. And citizens have been asking their government officials, what are all these drones? What's going on here? And the answer from the White House? Well, the classic textbook feckless Joe Biden administration answer. The top one comes maybe from Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who says, we are on it. Really? We are on it? Nothing to see here. Go home, folks. That kind of attitude. The American people deserve better. The American people deserve more. The American people deserve some truth and honesty and forthrightness here. Not confusion and differing stories. And one day, one bureaucrat says this, the next day, another bureaucrat says that. But that's what we have. That's what's going on with this White House administration. Are we surprised? Thankfully, Joe Biden's days are numbered. He and his whole batch of Democrat minions will soon enough be hitting the road. And thankfully, the adults will be back in the room. But before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my newsletter, Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. Just enter your email address in the newsletter section of the Washington Times website, and you'll get Monday, Wednesday, and Friday my newsletters containing my commentaries, my Bold and Blunt podcasts, and whatever video versions of my Bold and Blunts I do that week delivered right to your email box. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. And if you want to just quickly check out Bold and Blunt before subscribing, well, guess what? Lucky day, lucky day. You can get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. Let me play you this clip from Donald Trump at his press conference that he just held at his home in Florida when he was asked specifically about the drones flying about the United States. Here we go. This is from the Associated Press.
Can you comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey ports? It seems like the American people have a big disconnect.
The government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went.
You know what? That's just common sense. Of course. Somebody, at least, in America's government knows what these drones are, the source of whoever is flying them, their flight patterns, where they're going, and more importantly, maybe what data they're collecting. Of course, somebody knows. So to just toss it off as if, oh, these are just flying about in the air now because the FAA has changed some of its flight patterns. And so citizens just playing with their drones suddenly are on new flight patterns. And that's why you're seeing more of these in the skies. Yeah, that doesn't really sound as true. Back to this press conference, Donald Trump.
And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense.
And, you know, when you do seem to duck and dodge with truth, all it does is raise more suspicions, right? I mean, just in a matter of a few short hours of listening to this White House put out excuse after excuse and justification after justification and reason after reason for the presence of these drones, red flags were raised, right? And we're just coming off the spy balloons from China, where we were told nothing to see here. Go home, folks, that we're on it. We got this. The White House is all over this. And come to find out, oh, it's a spy plane. It's not just somebody playing with a balloon or whatever. And it's not just a weather balloon, as we were told, from the White House. And so coming off that and coming off an administration that has been nothing but feckless when it comes to foreign policy, beginning with the whole withdrawal of Afghanistan, where it will be burned into Americans' minds forever, as well as into the minds of all those around the world who look to America for leadership in foreign policy. It will be burned into all these people's minds, the image of the plane taking off from the airstrip in Afghanistan and all those people clinging desperately to the side of the airplane, trying to board as the plane was rolling down the runway. Terrible, terrible moment for the Joe Biden administration. Terrible, terrible moment for America as a whole. Lost trust around the world in America's ability to lead. But look, it's just that type of fecklessness that has marked this Joe Biden administration from beginning now to end, to his ending days, where we have these drones, these mysterious, which quickly moved into the label of suspicious drones flying in airspots around various states on the East Coast. We got this, says Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. We got this. Here's Trump.
I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should, because the people are really, I mean, they happen to be over Bedminster. Want to know the truth? They're very close to Bedminster. I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster.
Do you believe there's a connection between vaccines and...
Okay, now the press conference heads into another area. Very interesting, but I don't want to go down the talk of vaccines and the coronavirus and all that. Let's just stick with drones. So these drones flying about, we're told not to worry. The government's got this. The feds have everything under control. Go Christmas shopping. Go Christmas shopping, basically, is the message from this Joe Biden administration. And this is why not only the American people have lost trust in their government, but also, really, a deeper analysis here, a deeper takeaway is this: why the American people should never in the first place trust their government, right? It should never get to the point in America where we say, oh, so-and-so's in charge, everything's good, we can all go about our own business and turn our backs from politics. We don't have to pay attention any longer, no matter who's in office. I'm a big fan of Donald Trump, big fan of all the picks Donald Trump has named so far to surround himself with for his next 4 years in the White House. But at the same time, I'm not going to just go to sleep and turn aside from covering what he does and holding him and his cabinet officials accountable for promises made versus promises realized. I'm not going to turn my back and fail to look at the agendas and hold the agendas of this incoming administration up to the standard of a biblically sound, conservatively based worldview, right? That's what America is. It's Judeo-Christian principles. It's the idea of God-given individual liberties and rights as endowed by the Creator. So we're all inherently possessed of rights and liberties, and it's up to the government to show why they need to intrude or encroach upon those God-given rights and liberties. That's the standard here. Judeo-Christian principles, and then backed by a constitution that guarantees those Judeo-Christian principles and God-given individual rights and liberties will be upheld, that government is only there to serve and protect what individuals have as rights and liberties at birth. I'm still going to look at everything that this administration does, says, advocates for, pushes, and supports in the view of God-given individualism, God-given rights and liberties. And if this administration goes astray from that, as a commentary writer, as a podcaster, I'll point that out. But we should never get to the point, this is my point here, we should never get to the point that no matter who is in political office, as much as we may like that person, support that person's policies and agendas, we should never get to the point where we say, oh, okay, they got this, I can go about my own business. I can just go make money or hang with my family or go on vacations and leave the politics to the politician. Public trust in government. This is a survey from Pew Research Center, June 24th, 2024, so just a few months ago, between 1958 and 2024. Reading from this little summary statement here. Public trust in the federal government, which has been low for decades, has increased modestly since 2023. Pew writes, as of April 2024, 22% of Americans say they trust the government in Washington to do what is right, quote, just about always, 2% there, or most of the time, 21% there, end quote. Last year, in 2023, 16% said they trusted the government just about always or most of the time, which was among the lowest measures in nearly 7 decades of polling. When the National Election Study began asking about trust in government in 1958, about 3/4 of Americans trusted the federal government to do the right thing almost always or most of the time. So 3/4 down to 16% last year, 22% this year. Trust in government began eroding during the 1960s amid the escalation of the Vietnam War, and the decline continued in the 1970s, Pew writes, with the Watergate scandal and worsening economic struggles. Let me just read a little bit more here. Confidence in government recovered in the mid-1980s. Reagan years, before falling again in the mid-90s, Clinton years. But as the economy grew in the late 1990s, so too did trust in government. Public trust, still reading from Pew here, reached a 3-decade high shortly after the September 11th terrorist attacks, Bush in charge, but declined quickly after. Since 2007, the shares saying they can trust the government always or most of the time have not been higher than 30%. And guess what? 35% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents say they trust the federal government just about always or most of the time, compared with 11% of Republicans and Republican leaners. Well, that's no surprise, right? Because Democrats are your party of big government. They think government has the fix, the cure, the solution for all that ails everything, everybody, all the time. Big government, bigger government, biggest government, Marxist government, if they can make it slide in America, is what Democrats would love to see put in place. Because Democrats, they do love their government, right? Which is to say they do love their personal power and ambition, being paid by taxpayers. Republicans, party of, it used to be at least, limited government, party that recognized the concept of individual rights as endowed by a creator, party that recognizes, at least it used to be, the idea of American exceptionalism being rooted in God-given individual rights and liberties, and government only put in place to preserve and protect those individual rights. Yes, they've strayed a little bit, but it's no surprise then that only 11% of Republicans, at least participating in this Pew Research survey, say that they trust in the federal government to do what's right most or all of the time. Look, it should be 0%. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if you're left, right, in between, what have you. 0% trust in government all the time. That's the standard. How can you possibly trust 100% in government? How can you possibly trust 90% in government, right? Most or all the time. How is that even possible? I mean, you're just turning your whole life, practically, your whole path in life, your whole plans, your whole hopes for the future, your whole aspirations and inspirations and motivations and so forth. You're putting them in the hand of political leaders who don't necessarily have your personal best interest at heart. Supposedly, they have the Constitution's best interests in heart. But even then, that doesn't necessarily coincide with your personal best interest. So how can you say? It completely puzzles me how anybody, not even to mention 30% of Democrats or whatever the number was, 35% of Democrats, can put their trust in federal government most or all the time. And that seems decidedly anti-American as well, if you consider the questioning nature upon which our great republic, yes, I said republic, Democrats, it is a republic, upon which our republic was built. If we didn't have founders and framers of our Constitution who questioned the tactics of the King of England to the point where they went to war over it, then we wouldn't have the nation we have right now. It just seems to be in our DNA to question our political leaders. Anyhow, the drones are flying about. The White House under Joe Biden is saying nothing to see here. Cook your turkey. Go Christmas shopping. Buy 2 cans of cranberry sauce, not 1. It just seems to me that these drones flying about, the answers could be more clear. The answers could be clearer coming from this federal government, but they aren't. And there's a reason for that. And I suspect on this point that Donald Trump is right. For some reason, the federal government does not want us to know. And that's a red flag in itself. And I have with me a guest today. He's been on the show before. I love chatting with him because he always has such great inside scoop type information based on his own friendships and professional contacts in politics, in media, in the military. His name is Tony Shaffer, retired lieutenant colonel, best-selling author, and somebody that you know well, I'm sure, from his many, many appearances in the media and on his own show, The Hard Truth with Tony Shaffer. Tony, thank you so much for being back on Bold and Blunt. It is so great to have you here.
Carol, I enjoy our conversation, so thanks for having me.
Yeah, and let's dive right into what's going on the East Coast with all these drone sightings.
Sure.
You know, the Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas tells us that they're on it. They know all about it, not to worry. What do you say about it?
Well, if he means they're on it by the fact that they're protecting their phony baloney jobs, yeah, it's like a scene out of Blazing Saddles, you know, work, and that's what they're doing. It's like, oh yeah, we've got everybody engaged. We've got DHS, FBI, every alphabet soup, but it's like they're not doing anything. So, you know, to me, it's like the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. If you don't know what these things are, shoot them down. Oh, we don't want to do that. So this is the insanity that is the Biden national security, enterprise. And so it's an enterprise based on bureaucracy and failure. And this is kind of the ultimate icing on the cake at the end of 4 years of incompetence, like mystery drones who are, you know, kind of with impunity flying around New Jersey and New York, and, oh, we don't want to touch them. So as I've been saying in several interviews, well, the reason they're delaying is they're waiting for Fox Mulder to be pulled out of retirement so he can go do an X-File investigation. So, but to me, it's apparent two things are true. First off, There's a lot of drones that people can't track, and they're as big as a car or truck in some cases. So that's the first point. Secondly, these things seem to be wanting to be seen, because I got the question tonight. I was on with my friend Rick Leventhal. Well, Tony, do you think this is a clandestine test or something? It's like, Rick, we do clandestine stuff all the time, and it's clandestine. You don't see it. so you don't run around with lights on things as big as a school bus. So no, I think it's a distraction. I think this is the Biden administration doing things which are totally in character, but feckless. And I believe right now at this point, since they're saying, well, we don't know who it is. If you take them at their word, then you have to figure out who the usual suspects are. Well, China comes to the top of the list. They've got the technology, they've got the means, and they've got the interest. And oh, by the way, they did it before with the big old balloon that flew across the country.
Yes.
So my vote, if it's a foreign threat, is probably going to be China.
Yeah, I guess the thing that seems concerning is that whenever the government, especially the Democrat government, and one as feckless as this White House has been on national security and foreign policy, tells you not to worry about it, that to me seems a red flag that, oh, wow, we better worry.
Yeah, absolutely. Your instincts are completely correct. And I've found this from everything they do. Whenever they say something like, oh, Afghanistan, the withdrawal was perfection, or the issues relating to several other national security failures relating to China or North Korea or Iran. All these things which they try to explain away and tell us, oh, no, these are successes, they're failures. And they simply have done everything they can to act politically without regard to the reality in which we live. And my friend Catherine Herridge calls it happy talk. They're full of happy talk. And they're always trying to talk happily about the disasters they create. And so I'm to the point of where I believe the people they've picked are as incompetent as they appear. But, Cheryl, they want the incompetence.
Yeah.
They don't actually want the U.S. to be successful. They don't actually want these things, which I think you and I and most patriotic Americans would agree are important, like security, like prosperity. They don't want that. And this goes back to Barack Obama and his desire to take us down a notch. I think they were far more effective, Cheryl, in putting people in places of power, both in the Democrat Party and in the government, who have basically followed his Marxist philosophy of not taking us down a notch. So when you see incompetence, I always look at that as planned incompetence, and I think that's why we're at where we're at.
That's an interesting thought, right? The idea, Barack Obama's third term, and I know that, basically, I think we've all concluded that's what's gone on here. But do you think we know enough of the faces and names of Barack Obama's plants that have stayed through Joe Biden's administration for when this new administration comes that we can get rid of them? Or do you think so many are still in the shadows?
I think Barack Obama and the Clintons don't get along. I think he recognized the brilliance of their moves back in the 90s. People like Lois Lerner, who was famous for having been an appointee, switched over to being a permanent government employee, as an example of how the Clintons put people into the federal bureaucracy, worked their way up into senior positions. So you have that level of evil, just call it what it is, as well as those who did the same thing under the Obama years. And you have that both in civil servant and in general officers. So the answer is, yeah, you're going to have to go back and do a deep scrub of people based on when they started, where they came from, and you're probably going to be able to figure out pretty quick who they donate to. Let's face it, Peter Strzok,
Yes.
McCabe, Andrew McCabe, all those folks were kind of already selling their politics long before we discovered that they were part of the Russia collusion narrative. It was kind of like, yeah, they're supporting Democrats, so maybe they really are, and they really are. So this is one of those challenges. I was just going back and forth with one of the president's nominees this morning regarding this issue. You're going to have to go through at least the first two layers of leadership. I'm not saying fire everybody. I'm saying you're going to have to do a deep examination of if they are actually devoted to their oath of office or they're devoted to a political party, which is actually working to undermine the benefits of America and what President Trump wants to bring it regarding new policies.
So on that point, what do you think of Kash Patel then?
So I know Cash. I like him.
Okay.
I think he's going to have good instincts. One of his challenges, which I think he's overcome greatly already, is trying to go in and understand the bureaucracy.
Right.
Again, this is another conversation I had with another one of the folks going in. Is like, man, oh man, do they know how to hide things? If you're a professional bureaucrat, you understand how to go to ground, how to get through and hide things during investigations, how to go about trying to hide things in a budget. And so one of the things Cash is going to have to do is have someone, a deputy who understands budget, understands how they will take capabilities and stick them in odd places. It's like when you go into a store, you expect the pickles to be, amongst the other pickles, you want to get a dill pickle. Well, they're going to take that dill pickle and hide it if they don't want you to find it. They're going to stick it in the I don't know, kitty litter and hide it there so you don't find it. And I'm not joking. I know how I've been one of those guys on the inside. So so he's going to have to be smarter than the average bear and understand that they're going to, all these things that he's going to want to find, they're going to try to hide. And so he's going to have to be very diligent on that fact.
So one of Trump's weaknesses when he came into the White House the first time was what you just described. He didn't have a complete understanding
Right.
of the bureaucracy, right?
Exactly.
Well,
Yes.
now he's armed with truth and fact, and he's been target number one for years. Do you think he's prepared for the next wave of Democrat-fueled attacks against him?
So that's an excellent question, and the answer is, how do you prepare for the unknown
Right.
and new set of tactics? And the answer is, I think he's as prepared as anybody can be within the circumstance they're facing. And yeah, I think he's learned lessons. I think his current picks that he's made, like Kash Patel, like Pam Bondi, like Pete Hegseth, people who are outside the system but understand the system are going to be going in. And Pete is another guy. It's like I've full disclosure, people know this. Pete and I are friends, and I have said this to Pete. One of the things you're going to have to understand is the thing I just talked about. The bureaucracy is going to try to hide things on you. They're going to try to do things which make you think everything is fine, and then 6 months later things blow up. Remember, Cheryl, one of the notable features of 2020 was that President Trump's own bureaucracy and DHS was working against him. During that time, there were people already in place undermining the policy. That mistake cannot be made again. And so you're going to have to actually understand that the bureaucrats, when you're not watching them, are going to swag back to a previous policy or a policy that benefits the party of their choice, which are the Democrats, and you need to stop that. So I think that avenue of internal resistance will be minimized. It's still going to be there, but it'll be minimized. And I think the external Antifa and BLM, all that is going to be minimized, because I think Trump understands, I will invoke the Insurrection Act and I will deploy troops, because I think he learned that Mark Milley was lying to him last time, and that he had far more authority to do things to actually quell the violence than what Bill Barr and Mark Milley wanted him to do.
Will the media be minimized as well? Because signs show that they're getting their faces slapped back a bit. CNN, MSNBC, their ratings are massively down. Do you think
Right.
this is a humbling moment for them?
Boy, I hope so. I think that some people, even on the left, get tired of being lied to. And I think the reason that you see so many people dropping off of watching them on their side is because they were lied to. They know they were lied to. One of the people I associate with, and I have on our program often, I don't know if you have or not, but it's Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen. Mark, I recommend you check him out. Good guy.
Yeah.
He was calling balls and strikes all along, and he was like worried, like, hey, my stuff doesn't match up with what the left's putting out. So he
Right.
was like self-reflective. They weren't. So that now has expressed itself in that the left and their lying, I don't know what you want to call these people who pretend to be academics. They pretend to be arbiters of the truth. Well, they weren't. They were lying. The polls were all off perfectly. That Ann, what's her name, in Iowa, I think that was done as part of a larger psyop to try to convince people that, oh no, Iowa's really going to go for Kamala. Like, really? So I think they're tired of being lied to. So I'd like to believe the price of their lies is going to be diminished economic support for these outlets. And I hope that continues to be a trend, because I think even people on the left who really are good Americans, I think they do want the best for the country. They're tired of being lied to by their side. I think a number of big personalities are coming to that conclusion on their side. At least media personalities are coming to that conclusion. The Democrat leadership have yet to learn that lesson. So.
Let's just wrap up with a couple questions on what a smart Trump administration would do. First off, about the foreign affairs that this administration is completely bungled, from Afghanistan to what's breaking right now as we speak in the Middle East. What are the first steps Donald Trump should do to regain, put America back on the path of strong leadership?
Well, he's already doing some of it. I mean, just the telegraphing of strength, saying that we're with the Israelis, we're going to actually work to bring sanity to the Iraq issue regarding who's in charge of what, and the Middle East. I mean, I think we're going to be very definitive on certain policies which will be clarified. Then you move on to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. He's talked about freezing that. He's got some ideas already out there. He's already doing it. People are listening to him. And I think that's the biggest thing. Secondly, on day one, I think that he'd have to go in and just restore and revoke. Restore every policy he had in place before and revoke all the Biden ones. And then my friend, late friend, Bud McFarlane, God rest his soul, National Security Advisor President Reagan, always taught me personnel or policy. Immediately put the people in place who understand your policies and can go about using the mechanisms and levers of government to start making those policies work immediately. Those are the two things. You got to get people in. You got to get the people who will understand and be able to do it. The other thing I would argue, Cheryl, is that last go around, he put people in, probably had the right ideas. Some of them are very loyal, but they didn't understand how government works. And so I think he's understood now. It's like you got to do both. You got to have loyalty, and you got to have people understand how government works to make it work for him. So I think those two things, day one, would give him a good start. And
that's a good segue to my last question, talking about how people, putting in people who understand how things work. Tom Homan, right? He's going to be great. Now, the massive deportation agenda, campaign that Trump has promised, do you see that actually going forward, or do you think that that's more narrative than what will take place?
No, I think there are people on the left, like the mayor of New York, who have said, like I want to. And by the way, we give people like Adams top cover. I mean, it's like, it's not my fault. I'm just complying, It's not my fault. So, but people like Mayor Adams and others are going to recognize this as an opportunity to actually politically do something to benefit them. People like Mayor Brandon in Chicago will never get the message. They will never do the right thing, even though minority communities in his own city are fed up with him. So it's going to take a removal. And again, civility and good order restored, it'll give them some top cover for them to push on getting out people like Brandon. So I think Tom is completely serious and competent. I think he's going to have completely serious and competent allies to work with. I know one of the big issues is going to be what will DOD do to advise and assist on this. Oh, they can't do it. Oh, yes, they can. People need to go back, and I'm going to say this, and it is not a derisive term, Operation Wetback. That is the operation that President Eisenhower used to remove people, and yes, indeed, a guy who planned it was a lieutenant general. So we're just saying, the past is prologue in this case. So, it's coming, and people need to understand it.
Oh, it's great to have the adults coming back in the room, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Tony Shaffer, I want to thank you so much for coming on Bold and Blonde and for all your patriotic work on behalf of America. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Cheryl, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and thank you for I always enjoy our conversation.
Oh, Merry Christmas. And that's another Bold and Blunt. And if you like Bold and Blunt, remember you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's Libsyn ads.com today.